Hey there, this is Anne-Marie, the anti-HR HR lady, and I just wanted to make a quick video because, I opened up my computer to look at the news and was greeted with news of the Department of Homeland Security conducting raids at the homes of Sean P. Diddy, Love, Dream, whatever his name is, Combs, in both LA and Miami today. And you may wonder, what does this have to do with HR? But for me, there's often an HR takeaway that you can learn from some of these news stories that come up from time to time. And in this case, here's what my takeaway. And my takeaway in this case is directed at employers. Here's the HR takeaway in this situation that comes to mind for me. Sometimes as an employer, you're confronted with your wrongdoing by an employee, and it's very clear that you've done something wrong and you have exposure. But you think, I'll just wait them out, or I'll just call their bluff, or I'm not going to pay them now because I want to see what's going to happen next. Don't do that. If you know that you're wrong, and employers know when they're wrong, cut the check. When you get confronted, and I help employees confront employers with their wrongdoing and point out their legal exposure without them having to hire an attorney. I teach employees how to do this for themselves. But every now and again, there's an employer who decides they want to hold out and they want to see if the employee is going to file a lawsuit or file a claim with the EEOC or both. And they're going to roll the dice. Learn from the situation with Sean Diddy Combs today. Cut the check. Don't make the person have to go file a complaint, which becomes public record against you. Now, you guys probably remember several months ago, Mr. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, also known in the music business as Cassie, filed a complaint in civil court where she outlined many alarming, appalling, downright heartbreaking allegations against Sean Combs of things that she alleges that he did to her during their relationship, which was a long and lengthy one. Horrible sexual abuse, trafficking, just terrible things. Google is your friend. I'm not going to get into the details of it here. But as you may recall, when she filed the lawsuit, Mr. Combs' attorney said that it was nothing more than, extortion, and that she had approached them and asked them to pay her, and that they were not going to pay her because the allegations were not true. After the matter was filed, it got discussed furiously across the internet, and within 24 hours of it hitting the court system, Mr. Combs settled with Ms. Ventura, and the case was closed. However, those issues then became public. And after they became public, other people began raising allegations and claims against Mr. Combs. And one that got my attention right away was allegations related to him bringing a young girl across state lines from one state to another for sexual purposes, where the young lady alleges that she was sexually assaulted. But she made a point of saying that she was put on a plane and taken from one state to another state and then used for sex. Again, these are allegations, claims that were raised against him. They are on the internet. The court system has yet to decide whether they're true or false. But it caught my attention. Why? Because she was describing human trafficking. Now, I am not giving legal analysis, even though I am a licensed attorney. I am simply saying what I read. But that got my attention because I know what human trafficking is. And so I immediately thought to myself, he may get charged with human trafficking by the feds, or this may result in an investigation of him by the feds. And I remember mentioning it to a relative of mine because we were talking about the situation. And I said to that person, don't be surprised if this guy gets hit with federal charges, because what was described in those particular allegations were human trafficking, and there are federal laws against that, not just state laws, right? How many months later, there are now raids taking place at his house. So the takeaway, and he has not been tried, he hasn't been charged. They're just in his house seizing stuff today, though. And the feds don't do that for no reason. So clearly there's an investigation underway. According to the CNN report, which I will link in the description, there is an investigation taking place. But what I am trying to say is, had he just paid Miss Ventura when she approached him or his attorneys before she filed, it's very likely, none of us can predict, but it's very likely none of this would be taking place now, because the veil of silence would still be in place. I am actually proud of Miss Ventura. I think she's a very brave person for coming forward and putting those allegations in that complaint. And because when she did that, other people began coming forwards with their own allegations. And only time will tell whose allegations are true and whose allegations are false. But clearly, some of those allegations have resulted in him being investigated, and now people being in his house seizing things and raiding and seizing. Okay? So the takeaway for me from an HR perspective for employers is cut the check. If you know you're not right, if people come to you and tell you, you have done this thing or that thing, and I believe that what you've done is illegal, and I would like you to pay me to leave the situation, cut your losses and cut the check. By cutting the check, you get to limit your liability, because that's what separation agreements do. You pay the employee, and then they agree not to sue you in the future. Mr. Combs could have paid Ms. Ventura quietly, and none of this would have come to light. But clearly, something got in the way of it. I like to think it's pride. I like to think he thought she wasn't going to do anything. He didn't think she would actually file a lawsuit. But not only did she file a lawsuit, she put all of her allegations in the complaint, and they became public. In the filing, and they became public. So the takeaway for me for employers is cut the check. The takeaway for employees is confront these issues when they happen. Don't be afraid to go to HR with a strategy, which is what I teach my clients, but don't be afraid to confront these things and demand accountability in the form of making your employer pay you to go. But for employers, don't be like Sean Combs. Don't let pride get in the way of common sense, because who knows how this could turn out. He and R. Kelly could be roommates before this is all over. We don't know. But it's quite likely that perhaps if he had just taken care of this quietly when it first came to his attention, we wouldn't be seeing the feds running up inside of his house today. So employers, you know you're not right. You know you've done, if there's a chance that you have exposure and that you've done something wrong, cut your losses and cut the check. Let me know what you think of my comments. And I hope that this information was helpful. This is just my thoughts on this as I'm watching these reports. It came to me right away that this is what employers often do. They're full of themselves, and they think you're just one person, they're a big company, and they think that they don't have to pay attention to you. But sometimes, if you know you're wrong, and they know when they are, cut your losses and cut the check and avoid yourself the embarrassment and the cost, which will be larger down the road than if you just pay the employee and let them go. But once it gets into the court system, who knows where these things can end up and where they can go. And as we can see now, this is going to be a lot bigger than lawsuits and civil claims from Mr. Combs. This is turned into a criminal investigation. He could end up going to jail. Who knows what's going to end up happening? We don't know. But the feds don't run up in people's houses and raid and take things for no reason. So this is very serious now for him. And probably this could have all been avoided if he had just paid her before he made her go to court and file a claim against him and expose everything that she's allegedly, that happened to her, that resulted in him paying her within 24 hours of the filing being, I believe it was 24 hours. It may have been 36 hours, but it was a short period between when she took it to court and when he then paid her and got it not dismissed, but they dissolved it because she withdrew her claim and he paid her. But he probably should have paid her before she took it to court, because that opened the floodgates to all the things that have followed ever since. I'm actually glad she said something, but the point I'm making is that if he had paid her, none of this would have possibly happened, because no one was talking before that. But once one person came forward, one brave person comes forward, is sometimes all it takes, right? And so she came forward And now the floodgates have opened and he got the feds at his house today. So for employers, take this as an object lesson. If you know you ain't right, cut the check. This is Anne Marie, the anti-HR HR lady. HR is not your enemy, but they're definitely not your friend. I am. I'll see you in the next video.